Now, I mentioned Donald Trump's speech in the introduction to the program. He hasn't changed. He's still claiming he was robbed, hinting he might run again and getting plenty of energy from his supporters. I think the big takeout from his speech today is that he isn't setting up an alternative to the Republican Party at all. Rather, he wants to be the one setting the tone of the party.
You know that. We all knew that the Biden administration was going to be bad, but none of us even imagined just how bad they would be and how far left they would go. In just one short month, we have gone from America first to America last.
In his remarks, the president made it clear he has no interest in starting a third party, but he says he'd like to see the Republican Party reunited following the GOP's loss of the White House and Senate.
They kept saying, he's going to start a brand new party. We have the Republican Party. It's going to unite and be stronger than ever before. I am not starting a new party.
The president certainly hinted he could seek a second term in 2024, but he stopped far short of announcing any plans.
Who knows? I may even decide to beat them for a third time, okay? For a third time.
A third time, hey? Just forgets the one he lost. Now, US politics is not going to be predictable for a long while to come, especially on the Republican side. Incomparable columnist, author and commentator Mark Steyn joined me earlier from the US. Mark Steyn, thanks for joining us again. It's always great to talk to you. Donald Trump coming back, making a big speech. It's an astonishing event, given he lost the election back in November. And there's some positive things to talk about out of this speech. But the first point is he still doesn't concede he lost the election. He talks about running again in 4 years or 3.5 years to win a third time. How long can he continue with this delusion?
Well, the fact is that a majority of Republican voters agree with that delusion. You know, I don't even get into the specifics of it. As I think I said on your show last time I was here, American elections are simply the dirtiest, I think, in the Western world and have the lowest level of its integrity, and things that no Australians or Canadians or Europeans would accept. You know, where votes are not counted in the place they're cast. There are no real scrutineers, as they're called in Australia. Instead, the rival party is stuck outside the building and all the rest of it. I mean, if elections, this is before you get into the mass mail-in voting, that 2/3 of European Union countries don't allow, for example. I mean, even before November the 3rd, America's election integrity was the only, in the Freedom House rankings of freedom in the world, it was the only G7 member that did not get a 100% score on election integrity. So there always are dirty elections. And the point is, Trump really believes this. Whether or not the media believe it, whether or not American courthouses believe it, whether or not world leaders believe it, Trump believes it. And there's a useful American saying, you know, don't get mad, get even. Trump is mad, and at times some of the madness about what happened on November the 3rd showed tonight. He was completely upfront about it. The question is whether he's going to take it to the next stage. We know he's mad about it. The question is whether he's going to get even about it.
It is extraordinary, and there's a lot to be considered there when it comes to the electoral realities of the US. But I think in the end, in a democracy, you've got to have that loser's consent and move on. As you say, he talks about getting even. He talks about the possibility of running himself again, but he says he will stick with the Republican Party, not start his own. Now, there'll be many people in the Republican establishment who don't welcome that, right? He's saying that he's going to recharacterise or continue to characterise the Republican Party rather than leave it to the establishment.
And the fact is, a lot of that never Trump crowd now think, OK, Trump's over, he's done, he's toast, we're back in business. But, you know, as I said about all this when it started 4 or 5 years ago, it's easier for the base to get itself a new elite than for the elite to get itself a new base. Right now, the Democrats have a base, Trump has a base, it's not clear to me the Republican establishment has any kind of meaningful base. And so in that sense, you know, if you want a post-Trump Republican Party, you've got to find someone who brings to the table what Trump brings to the table. And right now, you know, Nikki Haley isn't it. And a lot of the other, you know, favoured candidates of the establishment aren't it.
Yeah, you can't have a grassroots movement of the kind that delivered Trump to the White House and got so much done and then abandon it as a political party. That would be disastrous. I think some of the interesting things we heard from Trump today point to a global trend, and that is that conservatives are being cancelled right across Western liberal democracies. And I think one of the reasons people warm so much to Donald Trump, despite his flaws, is that he won't take that. He attacks. He responds to the leftist attack aggressively. And there are indications, of course, today that that's going to continue. He's going to be the flag waver for conservative resistance, if you like.
Well, in an odd way. I mean, it took a long time for this thought to percolate in me, but it's interesting to me that in a certain sense, Trump does embody the big tech social media assault on free speech. In a certain sense, it was always interesting to me that 3-4 years ago, people got mad at his jokes. And we actually do live in an age now where the wrong joke can get you cancelled. If you make an infelicitous, unapproved joke, you'll get your Twitter account shut down, you'll get your Facebook account shut down. And it has always fascinated me the way when Trump is clearly joking, like that moment when he asked Russia if they happen to have Hillary's emails, could they release them to the world? That was clearly, he was just like making a joke. And the fact that they all went bonkers about it actually embodies what happens to all kinds of little people all over the planet, people who aren't famous. They make the wrong joke on Twitter. Boom. The fella after Nelson Mandela's funeral who made a Nelson Mandela joke in England. And Her Britannic Majesty's flat-footed constabulary came round to his door to demand that he account for his joke. In a certain sense, the war on free speech starts with joke. Jokes are a small little jewel. It's a miniature art. And all totalitarian societies in the end want to crush jokes, whether it's the Ayatollah Khomeini saying that Islam is, there are no jokes in Islam, or whether it's, the Soviet Europe, Milan Kundera's great novel, The Joke, where he makes the wrong joke and it ruins his life, or whether it's the woke left, which basically have moved to the Ayatollah Khomeini position, there are no jokes in wokeism.
Now, the other aspect I found interesting in Trump's speech was his critique of Joe Biden. Typically for Donald Trump, there was a lot of hyperbole in it. He says the worst start ever by a president. But very quickly, of course, Joe Biden is benefiting from what the Trump administration did on vaccine preparedness. But also when it comes to difficulties, whether it's the Middle East or borders, reality is catching up with Joe Biden very quickly.
Well, I don't know whether reality is catching up with Joe Biden, because it's not clear to me how many, whether he has both feet planted in reality. One of the strange things about this first month of the Biden regime is that in the normal course of events, he would be going along to address a joint session of Congress, which I never enjoy very much. It's totally un-Republican, and it's a kind of monarchical flourish in the manner of a throne speech in a Commonwealth Parliament, and I don't really care for it in a republic. I don't think it belongs in a republic, but nevertheless, that's what a new president is supposed to do. Biden hasn't done it, and when he does actually go out and talk, Mrs. Biden, the First Lady, which is a sort of honorific title. It's not supposed to be a full-time job. Nevertheless, for Jill Biden, it is a full-time job. She sits next to her husband as his handler, and when he gets confused about where he is or what he's talking about or the name of whoever it is he's meant to be meeting, she jumps in and does cleanup. So I don't actually, if you say to me, who's setting China policy? Who's setting immigration policy? I don't know who it is in there who's doing that, but I know one thing for certain, it isn't Joe Biden. He's a nominal head of the executive branch, and he's not actually an executive in any other sense of that.
I've said for a long while, Mark, it's got the look of a weekend at Bernie's about it. Thanks so much for joining us. Always great to talk to you, Mark Steyn.
Great to see you, Chris, and I hope one day this wretched, stinking COVID world will be over and I'll get to be in Australia sitting across the table from you, because things have gone on so long now, I'm even missing you, Chris.
Great stuff. We'll make it happen.